Now we're going to take a look at materials in Cinema 4D. So right now, as I was mentioned before, this object just has a flat appearance. It's like get this default material that's applied to it. And what I want to do is I'm going to rename this by hitting the return key, and I'll just call this vase. And what I can do with this, holding on the Option key, I can make copies of this. I can make copies of this vase by holding down the Command key, clicking on it, and then dragging. So I'm going to copy that once, and then copy that another time to give us 3 different vases. What I want to do is create separate materials for them and apply the materials to the actual vases themselves. So to create a material, down here in the Materials Manager, you have a Create option. I'm going to go to Create New Material, Command N, and that will give me this dialog box and these controls over here in the Attributes Manager. You can also double-click on the material itself to bring up the material editor. Now, honestly, you can get lost here in terms of all the different things, the controls that you can apply. But right now, we want to just deal with some basic stuff. So they're up on the top here for color. For color, you can choose RGB, HSV, K for Kelvin, and you can choose an eyedropper to pick a color up from anywhere. So using the RGB, I want to just mix color and get this blue shade a little darker than that. That looks pretty good. We have brightness options, but notice down here there's a texture option. So we can use some of the existing effects that come with Cinema 4D, or we can load our own textures by clicking this button. And right now, I'm just going to apply a marbling kind of texture to it. Notice that that eliminates the color. Well, the value of the mix strength, I can pull that back to bring some of the color back. And then there's model. Right now, I'm not going to touch that right now. I'm going to get a good mix for a marbling type. That looks pretty good. We have luminance. Luminance is the brightness or the intensity of it. And it also has to do with when light is bounced off the object, whether or not that object is going to shine that light back. Reflectance, if the object is going to allow for reflective material. If this was a glass space, let's say, I can introduce transparency. There's environment, fog. Bump is like a bump map to make the surface a little bit more rough or textured. And there's other options here. For right now, I'm just going to save this as blue marble. And then I'm going to close the material editor. Now, the materials get saved here, and you can have several different types of materials. But to apply a material, you can do it in a couple different ways. You can click and drag onto the actual object on the viewport, or you can drag it to the object in the Object Manager. So I'm going to drag this material onto this object, and you can see what kind of look that gives that. Now just create another texture, and we want to do the same thing. So I'm going to double click on this texture to bring up the material editor, and maybe make this one a different color. I want to make this more orange. And for texture, again, for the surfaces, we have, let's try rust. And again, this mix is a little too strong. I'm going to pull this back. And that's a really strong texture. And you can see in reflectance, there's different specular options. So you really can get lost with this. There's so many different options for what you can do with these textures and building these textures. It's really a science unto itself. There's a lot you can do with these. I'm just going to close that. And again, to apply a texture, just drag onto the object and just create one more texture here. I'm calling them textures, they're actually materials. So going back to color, this time we'll just do a basic color. I don't want to do anything too crazy. Yeah, something like that would work well. And just pull back the mix strength. Yeah, and then adjust the colors. Okay. And again, apply that to the object. Now I believe if you go in to a material that you've already created and edit it, it should change on the objects that it's been applied to. And you can see that it's updating right away. So as I make these changes, it's also updating on the objects it's applied to. Okay, so that's the materials manager, and we're going to see a lot more of the materials manager and what we can do with that. The next time, for the next video, we're going to take a look at lighting, and then the next one we're going to take a look at animation.